The biggest cost that you have is ignorance. So every single month, you've got your rent, you've got your food, you've got your clothes, you got your car, you got whatever else you spend. And you think that's my fixed costs. Years ago, I was sitting in the audience and I saw a man write $1 million on a whiteboard. And he called someone from the audience, he said, how much do you make per year? And they said, $50,000 a year. And he said, would you like to make $1 million a year? And the person said yes. And then he put a minus sign. And he said, did you know that it's costing you $950,000 per year to not know how to make $1 million a year? And it was such a light bulb moment for me that I realized that the cost of ignorance is the difference between what your goals are and what you have today. Because if you knew how to achieve your goals, the difference is the value of that education. And so the number one priority in my life has always been to pay down ignorance as fast as I possibly could, using whatever currency I needed to. So if that was relational capital, that means using my network or doing favors for people or paying money, which is the least efficient way of doing it, I would try and find a way that I could pay down ignorance to achieve the things that I wanted. So I could get the information, so I could get the learning. There's two types of things that you can learn. And so if you're trying to pay down ignorance, you got to know what you're buying. So you can learn about something that exists that you didn't know existed, and then you can learn how to do something. And so one is called declarative knowledge, knowledge of existence. The other is called procedural knowledge, which is knowing how to do it. And so if I explain to you that private equity exists, and this is how you can buy, package, and sell a business for a lot of money, now you know about it, which is a prerequisite for learning how to do it. And so when you buy into access to networks, to people, to relationships, the primary thing that you're learning is learning about things that exist. They're going to tell you tax strategies, investment strategy, marketing strategies, sales strategies, business models that you haven't heard of. That is what you learn there. But if they tell you those things, you leave and you get excited. But then you're like, well, shoot, how do I do it? Which is the second thing that you learn how to do, which is the how part. And so when you're going into any kind of investment, whether you're investing time, you're investing trade, you're doing some work for someone so they do work for you back, or you're investing money, you better be sure what you're buying. And the interesting thing about those two types of knowledge is that the declarative knowledge tends to teach you things that you didn't know existed. It's the unknown unknowns. That is why some of these are the biggest breakthroughs when you get into those rooms with someone making 10 or 100 times more than you. They see the world in a different way. Whereas when you go for how to, it's more predictable what you're going to get because you're specifically trying to learn how the scale is. You know it exists and you just need to clarify the steps to getting there. And so just delineating what you're trying to learn will help you actually learn it. A watch isn't going to replace work. A Rolex isn't going to replace reality. And so what happens a lot of times when you're coming up is that you want to get status, right? You feel downtrodden, you feel like no one respects you, and that's normal as a young man. That's what you do. You don't have any status. That's what you come into the world as, and you got to go make it. And so the thing that you want to do early on is get status as fast as possible. But the thing is a lot of times you trade short-term status at the expense of long-term. And so as somebody who has lots of young men in my audience and middle-aged men in my audience, you'll never impress someone who's wealthier than you with assets. You'll only impress people below you. So you have the wrong target audience. Because to impress poor people, you outspend them. To impress rich people, you outwork them. And once I understood this, I was like, oh, the guys who are at the top of the game give me respect because they know I'm a future one of them. Because they know when they were my age, they doubled down on the hustle, not the highlight reel. Buy time like a rich person, buy stuff like a poor person. And so when you're thinking about time being the most valuable thing, if you've already dedicated yourself to working and earning an income and learning the skills, then you just want to pour as much time into that as you can. And so fundamentally, you're buying your time back, your low cost time or low income time. So it's prepping food, going grocery shopping, cleaning your house, whatever else you do, with more income earning time. I remember the first time I closed a $500 sale at my gym, I realized that that sale took me 30 minutes. And I knew that for me to buy groceries for the whole month 4 times would take me $500 and far more than 30 minutes. And so I thought to myself, my God, if all of that time I was grocery shopping and food prepping and cleaning up after myself and then doing laundry, if all of that time I could just sell more, in a couple hours, I could do all of that stuff for free. And my poor mind was like, hey, that's wasteful. You could be doing that stuff on your own. But you buy time like you're rich. You spend money on stuff like you're poor. So buy time, not stuff. Because when you buy time, you can replace the money you bought it with and some. Not only are you going to save the time and then work and make more, but you also get better at your job because all of those extra hours aren't just making you more money, you're also becoming more skilled. So you get better faster. Who you compare yourself to, not who you spend your most time with, will be the highest predictor of how much you make. And so we are motivated by the things that we lack. And so if you're very hungry, it's because you lack food. If you lack sleep, you're very tired. You're very motivated to sleep. And so if you want to be motivated to make money, it's not enough to not have money. You have to have a desire to make a lot more money. And the strongest way to create that desire is to visually see the people who are making far more than you. And so it's about who you compare yourself to, not who you spend time with. Fundamentally, the richest man in the world only spends time with people poorer than him, but he continues to get richer because he's comparing himself to the future version of himself. That's his reference point. That's his reference group. And when you start out, there's real people. As you evolve, it becomes imaginary. So if you're not sure who you compare yourself to versus who you spend time with, when you're about to make a big decision, the people who come up in your mind, who you're weighing their opinions on your decision, those are your reference group people. The people whose opinion you care about. Invest, then spend the rest. So the idea is that you invest first and then spend what's left over. It comes down to saying that you need your future self to be bigger than your current self today. And so you invest first and then you spend the rest. Automate investing and then create friction around spending. And so you want to take the money off before you see it. If your job, for example, has a way that they can automatically skim off your paycheck and put it into some sort of investment stuff, do it. If they don't have that, have one of these apps that does segmentation or has multiple bank accounts that you can say, this automatically goes here, this automatically goes here, and I don't touch this. And if you want to get real crazy, the advanced version of this is that as you make more money, you keep what you're living, the spend the rest part. Instead of making it a percentage, make it a fixed amount. And then as you make more, you're just investing more and more and more into the future. Now you're like, well, how do I invest in the future if I'm just starting out? The future is you. But you're making sure that when you're investing that money, you know whether you're buying declarative knowledge or you're buying procedural knowledge. You're learning about stuff that you need to learn or you're learning how to do it. And the longer you do this, the easier it gets. It's easier to make $1 million than it is to make $100,000. And let me explain. If I told you to go down the block, you would go at a certain speed. If I said, go as fast as you possibly can, at some point you'd run and then you'd improve your form and you'd get better footwear and then you'd change your clothes. But at some point you wouldn't be able to run any harder or any faster to get there. But if I said, I need you to go 5 blocks, you might be like, okay. Now some people will then try to walk or run that. But the smart cookie then says, I could take a car and I would go a hell of a lot faster. And if I'm speeding in my car, I'll probably get to the 5th block before the other guy gets to the end of the 1st block. And so the magic of thinking bigger is that you change your solution set, meaning you use different tools to accomplish the objective. The reason $100,000 per year is the hardest amount of money to make is because it assumes for most people that they will trade their time in terms of hourly wages or salary in traditional work in order to get it. And so they have to spend all of their time in order to make the $100,000. But if I said make $1 million or even 10 million before the world explodes, you would know that you would have to use a different way of solving that problem. You don't want to love money. You want to learn to love making money. The more money you make other people, the more money you make. And so the amount of money that you will be able to make in your career comes down to 3 variables. Number 1 is the value that you're able to create in total for all of the people you create it for, times your ability to negotiate how much of that value you're able to get, times number 3, which is the amount of other people who can also create that value. And you have to have all 3. Because for example, if you develop a skill of sales and you can create millions of dollars in value for a company and you're really good at negotiating, then in theory, you'd get millions and millions of dollars from that company. But if somebody else is willing to work for a few $100,000 a year in order to make that value, then your position disappears. And so that gives us the blueprint for making money, is that not only do you want to be able to create that value, you want to be able to create a value in a way that no one else can. And the way that you do that is not by, in my opinion, learning some incredibly secret, unique skill. What makes skills unique is the skill set. It's the stack of skills together that create the uniqueness. If someone else has to try and recreate something I could do, they would have to have lived my life. Your time is your weapon if you invest it wisely.